is me at age 13, addressing the nation and the media from the office of the Minister of Finance. It was at this point I had somewhat unknowingly and almost accidentally become an advocate for socioeconomic development in Kenya and youth participation in that process. Today, what I'd like to talk about is the critical value of investing in building the skills of our young people, and by extension, talking about how we as youth can start to engage with some of the critical issues we face on the continent and start to solve them and break barriers. On my 13th birthday, I decided to write a letter to the Minister of Finance. At the time, it was Honorable Amos Kimunya. This was not the first letter that I'd sent to a public figure. I had sent, even over the same year, a series and a catalog of letters to people I admired. For example, I sent a letter to the senior pastor of my local church, talking about how he can improve some Sunday school activities, maybe have some more outdoor games. So my 13-year-old self believed that sending a letter, that correspondence, is the best way of making your voice heard and also making a change in your community. So what prompted me to write the letter to the Minister of Finance? I had earlier that year traveled to South Africa for a young people's conference organized by Brookhouse and a wonderful institution called the Round Square. It was my first time out of East Africa, and coming back from South Africa, I started to ask myself many questions because when I was there, I was struck by the quality of the roads, infrastructure, and I started to ask myself some questions. Why does Kenya not have the same quality of roads and infrastructure? Why is there such a gap in terms of equality, in terms of riches between Kenya and other developed nations? Why is there also inequality within our own Kenya? And what can we do, or what can I do to alleviate that as an individual? So on the evening of my 13th birthday, I jotted down and scribbled down some notes, some of these ideas, and I decided, okay, I'm writing the letter to the Minister of Finance. I showed my parents the letter. They were kind of incredulous, like, how did you write this? Did you get this off the internet? And I said, no, this is my stuff. But despite their doubt and reluctance, they took the step of faith, a leap of faith, and sent the letter off to the Minister of Finance. A couple of months passed. The letter is in the recesses of my mind. I completely forgot what happened or what even I wrote. And to my surprise, the minister got hold of the letter. He was so impressed by the contents of it, so much so that he invited me to be part of the annual 2007 Budget Day reading in Parliament. It was at that specific moment I had realized the sheer magnitude of what I'd just done. It completely reformed the notion, or my notion, of what is possible if you just take one small step or one small initiative to contribute to your community. 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25. We need to tap into this resource. And I sincerely believe, that the key to Africa's development is investing in our human resources and our human capital. I was lucky enough to be part of a program that also believed on this same promise of building the next generation of African leaders. In 2010, I had the wonderful privilege of being admitted to the African Leadership Academy. I got to meet many young people who are like-minded and passionate about changing the continent. And it was here I also learned the value of collaboration, because a lot of the issues that we face as Africans are very similar. I collaborated with a friend of mine from Kampala, Uganda, called Francis Eki. we combined our minds together and put our minds together to start something called the Young Entrepreneurs Challenge, which taught entrepreneurship and leadership to about 40 students from around 4 different schools in Kampala. The impact was palpable, however small it was. And from this experience, I learned that young people need to be given the platform and just a little bit of encouragement to be able to innovate. And that's what we need to do. We need to do more of that so our young people can break barriers. Earlier this year, I traveled to the Republic of Mali as part of my master's research program at the University of Oxford. I was looking at a policy by the Malian government that stipulated that for the first 6 years of a child's formative learning, they have to learn in their mother tongue. This program was designed to firstly promote and preserve the culture of the Malian people, but as well curb dropout rates and in the long term improve the quality of human capital. In theory, the policy sounded very good, but in practice, there were many barriers. For example, lack of adequate training for teachers, lack of didactic or educational materials, the vastness and the diversity of languages in Mali, corruption and mismanagement of funds. Unfortunately, this policy is somewhat emblematic of the issues we face as the African continent in trying to improve our human capital. We need to break that barrier. For me, sending the letter to the Minister of Finance was my own small way of responding to the inequality that I observed as a young person in my community, in my society, in the country, and in the world at large. My dream is that every young person across the continent one day will have an equitable opportunity to be able to leverage on their skills and talents to make a change even in their own small way. Allow me to quote my own 13-year-old self from the letter I sent to the Minister of Finance. This is what I told him. I told him I won't complain about how good or bad the government of Kenya is. But what I'll do, I'll build Kenya and take action even in the smallest way I can. 3 takeaways for you today. 1, there's so many opportunities for you to make a small change and contribute in your community. Seize it. 2, your age does not matter. What matters is your willingness and your courage to take initiative. And finally, let's all take that small step, that small action, even in our daily lives, in whatever profession, whatever vocation you're in, to try and make a change. Thank you.